Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Kerry Roberts, Roberts.
And where do you live, ma'am?
Canton, Mass.
How long have you lived in Canada?
Oh, really? There's no cross of Kerry Roberts? There isn't? Wait, what? She's a huge witness. Okay, I guess it depends on what she's saying.
10 years.
And who, if anyone, do you live in Canada?
My husband, my 2 children.
And your 2 children, how old are they? And boy, girl?
My son is 12, my daughter's 14.
And do you work, ma'am?
I do.
What do you do?
I'm an executive assistant.
How long have you been doing that?
17 years.
And your husband, Kurt, does he work as well?
Yes.
What does he do for work?
He's a heavy equipment operator.
And how long has he been doing that?
Maybe 20 plus years.
Now, if I could turn your attention to
Why do we need to know that, Mr. Lawley? You already testified.
the evening of January 28th, 2022 into the morning of the 29th. Do you recall those dates? Yes. And do you recall what days of the week they were?
Say it again.
Do you recall what days of the week they were?
John O'Keefe's friend, her husband has already testified. She is a executive assistant, and let's get to the January 28th day. She is the first victim to show true emotion for the loss of the victim. Okay, I can't wait to watch this then. Beautiful Messy Ball, hello, how are you doing today? Your channel is how I found about, the Apple River stabbings. Yeah, wow, time goes by so fast. It's already almost June. His sentencing is going to be in July.
To the morning of the 29th. Do you recall those dates? Yes. And do you recall what days of the week they were?
Say it again.
Do you recall what days of the week they were?
Friday.
So 28th.
Friday the 28th. Saturday the 29th.
Now, on the evening of the 28th, do you recall what you were doing that evening?
I was bowling with my daughter and her friends and one of the mothers.
And do you recall where that was?
Westgate Lanes in Brockton.
And about what time was it that you got home from that?
Probably about 8:30ish because there was a storm coming, so we wanted to be home. I didn't want to be out late.
And when you got home, you and your daughter, is that correct?
Say that one more time.
You and your daughter came home around 8:30 or so?
Yes.
Or if anyone else in your house was home when you got home?
I think my husband was home. He was going out. I think I passed him, and he was heading out to meet his friends.
I think Kerry's the most credible witness so far.
Was not home.
And who were the friends that he was going out to?
John O'Keefe and Michael Camerano.
So, Ms. Roberts, I'd like to start with just Mr. Camerano. How do you know?
He's been childhood friends with my husband.
And do you know where your husband was going to meet Mr. Camerano and Mr. O'Keefe?
Miss McCarthy's. It's a bar in Canton.
Yeah, because I can understand maybe the Alberts not really being, I don't know. When they testified about John, maybe not being so emotional because they weren't close to him. But like when Matt McCabe and Jen McCabe went up there, I expected them to be, I guess, way more emotional because they were friends with John. They took care of each other's kids. They did stuff together.
In the center of town, is that right?
Yes.
And Mr. O'Keefe, how do you know?
I've known him since high school.
And where did you go to high school?
Braintree High School.
And how is it that you came to know Mr. O'Keefe? How would you describe your relationship with him?
He was one of my closest friends.
In addition to Don O'Keefe, through growing up and going to Braintree High, were you familiar with any other members of the O'Keefe family?
Yes, Kristen, his sister, was a senior when I was a freshman. John was a year older than me, and Paul was 2 years younger than me. So at some point, I was in school with all of them. And
after high school, at some point, did you come to know any of the members of the O'Keefe family while you were living in Canton?
Yes, my son and John's nephew went to an in-home daycare together. So I went to go pick up my son at one point, and Kristen was there, and we kind of figured out that we lived in the same neighborhood that we were going to be moving into. And then Kristen got sick.
And during that time, sort of when you first reconnected with Kristen, about how old was your son and her son?
My son was 18 months. Patrick he's almost a year older.
And your son and Patrick Furbush, did they end
Sorry
up
for the typos. No worries. It's all good.
going to the same school again?
Yes, they went to
we
home
buckled up?
daycare. They went to preschool, pre-K. And by the time they got to elementary school, they got separated because they were troublemakers.
But did they go to the same school all throughout?
Yes.
And what any other activities did your son do along with Kristen?
How's it going, Mom?
Well, Patrick wanted to try hockey. So they did hockey together, and then he didn't like that. And they played baseball together since they were T-ball, like 4 or 5.
Now, you mentioned that Kristen O'Keefe, or Kristen Furbush at that point, at some point after you met her, she got sick, is that right?
Correct.
Eventually she passed away, is that right?
Correct.
After she passed away, her husband also passed away.
Correct.
And at some point after that, what, if any, role did John O'Keefe have with reference to?
Well, when Kristen passed away, I was in touch with John, just seeing if they needed help with the...
I'm doing good. Wait, why am I all the way to the side? Did I actually kick my camera? Oh, God! Was I always to the side like this? Did I move my chair? Maybe I moved my chair. Ugh. There we go. Sorry, new setup for today. But my camera, I think, looks way clearer than normal. What did I think of Jen's testimony? Okay, so I mentioned this before. I thought Jen's testimony started off really credible, especially in direct examination. As we went through cross-examination and we had some inconsistencies with her statements about the I hit him thing, especially since how in the initial grand jury, it seems like she said that maybe Karen said, did I hit him? Maybe I hit him. And then later on it changed to I hit him. That was a problem for me. And then also the phone calls that were, she said she did make some phone calls to her sister, but then it showed in the report that the phone calls were made like 7 seconds, 8 seconds. And then also it showed that the phone calls were deleted. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird for me, you know? Because we have two issues with the phone calls, right? Whether or not the phone calls were actually made, if someone picked up, if there was a conversation, and then two, whether or not they were deleted. And then we got into the text messages, the phone calls to John. So the defense was trying to say that, oh, you deleted these phone calls to John O'Keefe. She's like, sorry, not delete phone calls, sorry. You called John O'Keefe this many amount of times, and she said it was a butt dial. I'm like, okay, maybe that's possibly, could be a butt dial. 6 times, 7 times, I don't know, that sounds kind of a lot, but I don't know, maybe. And then the real issue really came to the what's it called? Oh, I don't remember. Sorry, I don't really have my old notes here. There was a search history that came up. I'm gonna have to wait for the experts to explain that part, I guess, because to me it's just like, you're saying that you didn't make the search at 2 a.m., but it said you did. And then not only did it said you did, it also said that you deleted it. So that's 2 issues with that. So I think towards the end of the cross-examination, I think they really tore her apart. And then I was like, okay, well, in redirect, Lolly better get this. In redirect, it just wasn't very strong. But then at the same time, I just don't think Lolly's just very strong at doing some of the redirects anyways. I don't know. Anyway, so that's how I feel about Jen McCabe. I thought she started off really strong and then kind of just really chipped away because there was a lot of inconsistencies, and I need explanations for why things were deleted, if they were deleted. And then, also, like, some of the things that she said that didn't show up in police reports, or it was written differently. It's like, okay, that could have happened with one police report, because, sometimes people do write things wrong. But she's saying that also happened in, like, another police report. So that's, like, 2 separate officers that could have wrote something wrong. And she's like, oh, I never said that. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully Kerry Roberts will clear it up, because a lot of the stuff that we heard from Jen McCabe, like the I hit him thing, I want to know if Kerry Roberts will say the same thing. I want to know if Kerry Roberts is gonna, I don't know, I want to know what her thoughts are of the McCabes and the Alberts as well, especially after everything happened.
The kids, getting them to and from wherever, because I was down the street. Kristen passed away, and then he said, I might move in. Steve's got to figure out finances, but I might move into your neighborhood. I said, oh, okay. And then when Steve died, John did move in, and he took over raising the kids.
Fair to say that you were.
The butt deletions. I don't know. It seems like a lot of people were butt dialed. Brian Albert also said he butt dialed Brian Higgins while he was having sexy time with his wife. And I was like, yeah, that could happen. But then it's also like, how many people sleep with their phones in their beds, especially if a nightstand, right? You would put the phone into the nightstand. But then if you were super drunk and you were browsing on your phone, I could see maybe you just like left it on you and you slept on it. But he said, no, I normally sleep with the phone in my bed, not on the nightstand. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't know.
With reference to your son being friends with his nephew Patrick, you would see him fairly often, and by him I mean John O'Keefe.
Oh, yes, daily.
And what, if any, at some point did John and his niece and nephew move from down the street from your house?
Yes, they moved across town. So I live on the Milton side. He moved over sort of near the Stoughton side.
Listen, if Mr. Lolly has experts who are going to testify and they never address the search history times or the deletions, I'm going to have a huge problem with that, because Lolly kind of just didn't even address some of the stuff in redirect, where I was like, okay, he must be he's going to talk about why these phone calls could have been. I actually don't even know how he would address it with Jen McCabe, honestly, but I feel like there has to be something that he could say where it'd be like, oh, people make butt dials all the time, don't they? Right? You do butt dials. I'm sure the jury has done butt dials as well. Maybe the jury could resonate with that, right? But I don't know, the deletion things and stuff like that, I'm not quite sure how you're gonna fix that, but I thought he would bring it up.
About how far a drive is that sort of from your house to
Hi, Chris.
It was on Meadowtown, correct?
Yes, it depends, because Canton's terrible for traffic. Maybe 7 minutes, maybe 8, depending. And if it's in the evening, it's longer.
And after Mr. O'Keefe and his niece and his nephew moved sort of across town, Where did his nephew Patrick, where did he go to school at?
He remained at the same school that he was at with my son. So on Wednesdays, when John couldn't grab him in time because he'd be working in the city, Patrick would come home with me.
You familiar with what Mr. O'Keefe did for a living?
He was a Boston police officer, but at the time he was working in an office registering sex offenders.
And, you would help out as far as picking up his son. What, if any, assistance did you have with regard to his niece Kaylee as well?
Say that one more time.
What, if any, assistance did you have with regard to Mr. O'Keefe and his schedule with regard to his niece Kaylee as well?
I didn't take care of Kaylee as much. That was sort of, there was other women, Jen McCabe, one of them, she sort of really took hold of caring for Kaylee because her daughter was friends with Kaylee, and I sort of got Patrick. So
Lily, you have to keep your voice up. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sorry.
If you could keep your voice up too, okay?
My apologies. And then through the years that you knew Mr. O'Keefe when he lived in Canton and your time being friends with him, what kind of conversations would you have with Mr. O'Keefe in regard to any sort of relationships or dating or anything like that?
Well, he dated a lot of people. So it depends.
Your conversations with what, if any, sort of role would you have, or what if any, knowledge did you have in reference to the people that you date?
My husband, whenever he would go on a date with somebody, he would have my husband come meet them, sort of say, like, what do you think? And he had a couple of girlfriends that were very nice.
Now, at some point, did you become aware of a person by the name Karen?
Yes.
And when was it and how was it that you first came to know that person?
Yes, tell
John
us.
called me and said, Karen and I are going to stop by because we had people over. And I said, who is Karen? Because I didn't know if he was going to bring someone from high school and surprise me with a random, I had never heard of her. And he said, you know who Karen is? The girl I'm dating. And I said, nope, but okay. And then they came over that night.
And do you recall when about that was?
I think it was sometime in July.
July what?
What are we, 2020?
Sometime shortly after sort of the
Pandemic
COVID
time?
pandemic.
Yes.
How would you describe your relationship, if any, with Karen?
She was like another person that took care of the kids. She took care of Kaylee and Patrick a lot, so I would coordinate with her if Ryan and Patrick were going to go to the golfing range, or if Ryan was going to go with them to the Red Sox game, that kind of thing. We'd do lunch or hang out like girlfriends.
Were there any occasions where you had sort of socialization or go out as couples or anything like that with Mr. O'Keefe?
No, they came over our house one time, and then we'd do baseball tournaments down the Cape, and we'd all get together, but the four of us never went out.
Just for clarity purposes, you see Ms. Reed in the courtroom today.
Yep. No.
Identify her as where she's seated or an article of clothing?
Say that again?
Could you identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing?
She is seated at that front table, and she has a black and white suit jacket.
Can I just pass the record reflected application by the witness?
Yes.
Lolly probably hates this case since he's a sole prosecutor. I'm like,
Now,
why does Lolly not have a team of people to help him? I get it's a small town, but Jesus.
back to that evening of the 28th, your husband went out to meet Mr. Camerano in this room, correct?
Yes.
And do you know about what time it was that your husband arrived home that night?
Maybe around 10:30.
And after he arrived home, what, if anything, specifically do you recall the two of you doing or anything before going off today?
I remember sitting on the couch, and the front door was right there, and it was open, and it started to snow. It had just started to come down probably about midnight, but it was coming down fast, so you knew it was. Little snowflakes usually mean a big snowstorm, and I said, well, it's starting, so we went to bed because we knew we weren't going out anywhere.
And as far as turning your attention to the next morning, at some point you awoke. Do you recall what it was that awoke you that morning on the 29th?
Karen called me at 5 o'clock in the morning.
And is that sort of a normal occurrence as far as Ms. Reed calling you and specifically calling you that early?
No.
And when you went to answer the phone, at some point did you look at sort of like the screen to your phone?
I don't know. I just answered
This
it.
in a different way. As far as at some point, did you realize or did you know whether or not
Lolly, what were you trying to say?
that call that at some point you answered, correct?
Yes.
And the call that you answered, do you know whether or not that was the first call Ms. Reed had placed you that morning or not?
It was the second call, only from looking at my phone after, because I said, oh, shoot, she called me. She just called and I didn't. She called twice.
And the phone call that you answered, what time was that?
5 on the dot.
And if you know, from looking at your phone, the phone call that you didn't wake up or didn't answer, do you know how long before that phone call was?
I think it was a minute or two before.
So 5 o'clock on the dot, you get a phone call, you answer it, and it's Ms. Reed, is that right?
Correct.
And that phone number, you had her sort of programmed into your phone as a contact, is that correct?
Yes.
And on prior occasions, had you called that number or gotten a call from that number on prior occasions?
Yes.
And when you got that call and made that call, who was the other person on the end that you received?
Say that again?
Maybe a pretty simple question as far as it goes, but just with reference to any prior phone calls that you could have
Yes, can we stick to simple questions, please?
got to receive with that number that you programmed in as Karen Reed. When you spoke to someone by calling or receiving a call from that contact, who was on the other end of the call?
Karen Reed.
Okay.
Look at her facial expression. Wait, was he trying to ask if Kaylee was on the other line too? Look at the face that she gave Mr. Lolly. She's like, duh, Karen Reed, what are you trying to ask me? You need a little replay of that.
Number on prior occasions?
Yes.
And when you got that call or made that call, who was the other person on the end that you received?
Say that again?
Maybe a pretty simple question as far as it goes, but just with reference to any prior phone calls that you either got or received with that number that you programmed in as Karen Reed. When you spoke to someone by calling or receiving a call from that contact, who was on the other end of the call?
Karen Reed.
Okay. So you answered the phone sometime right around 5 a.m. and
I don't know. Mr. Lawley was trying to get a different answer, or he was trying to say something else, and I just got lost in the sauce.
described to the jury sort of what the content of that conversation was.
I answered the phone, and she said, John's dead. Kerry, Kerry, Kerry. And then she hung up.
And as far as her in the conversation, did you say anything or get a chance to say anything before she hung up?
No.
And when she's speaking to you and saying those words to you over the phone, how loudly is she saying those words?
Very loud. She woke my husband, who was sleeping.
By the time that the phone
You know what? I actually want to watch all of Karen Reed's interview now because I wonder if she has a habit of saying things 3 times in a row.
rings and you pick it up, your husband's sleeping, correct?
Yes.
And then afterwards, he's what?
Correct.
Has anyone in my chat, have you guys watched Baby Reindeer? Oh my god. I haven't finished the show yet, but I watched the Piers Morgan interview with the real life Martha lady. Oh my lord. That was very interesting. Now I gotta watch the TV show. Hi Be Cool, how are you doing today? Thanks for joining us. Hello. I had to start over my stream because my internet.
Now, what happened then?
Then I got out of bed, and Kurt said, "What was that?" I said, "I don't know. Something's happening." And I think I started getting dressed at that point because I don't know if I started getting dressed at that point or after she called back again. I tried to call her, I think a couple times back to be like, what is going on? Finally, she called me back again.
Oh, really? The chat's frozen? Oh. Well. Let's see. Thank you. Let's try this again. Thank you. Thanks, Storm. I appreciate it. Have you been playing Overwatch lately, Storm? All right, thanks. She's confused about Lolly's questions we've all been. I don't believe that. I don't believe at all she was immediately said he was dead or talked about her light being cracked.
And she said, after she called back again, I tried to call her, I think a couple times back to be like, what is going on? Finally, she called me back again, and she said, I'm afraid John might be dead. He might have gotten hit by a plow. He did not come home last night. I was not supposed to stay in Canton last night, and he would never leave Kaylee alone. I think something happened.
Do you recall earlier in the day of the 28th having any communication with either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed? Do
I did with John. He texted me.
you recall generally what that was about?
My son got into a scuffle with some boy at school, and Patrick wasn't in school at the time. I think he went to a doctor's appointment, but Patrick got wind of it, so John was calling to see if my son was okay.
Wait, so Karen told her, I'm not supposed to stay in Canton tonight. Kaylee's not supposed to be home by herself. But she was out drinking pretty late. Where was she supposed to go? Back home?
Now, turning back to, again, that morning on the 29th, you called Ms. Reed a couple times. She didn't answer. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at some point, she called you back?
Correct.
And about how long was it after that initial phone call that you had where she hung up? How much time it elapsed between that call and the next one?
I don't know, maybe 5 minutes.
And so when she calls back, she makes those statements to you that you just testified about. And upon her making those statements, what, if anything, was your response?
Then she said she checked Kaylee's phone to see if John had called. And I said, okay, where are you now? And she said, I'm driving. Can I come to your house? Will you drive my car? I don't remember anything from last night. We drank so much, I don't remember anything. And I said, you need to go home and be with Kaylee if she's there by herself. I'll go look for him or something of that nature. Because I said, you're going to get a DUI. If you were drinking all night last night and you don't remember anything, you shouldn't be driving.
All right, so next question, please.
When you were talking to her on the phone, what, if any, observations did you make of sort of how she was speaking
She was very frantic, and her voice was elevated. She was very frantic.
and the loudness that you were describing during the course of that first phone call, what, if any, observations did you make with respect to that in regard to the second?
Same. Throughout the rest of the day, it was the same.
You indicate to her that she needs to go home, is that right?
Correct.
And what, if anything, did you say in response to that?
She said, I'm going to come to your house. Will you drive my car? And I said, okay.
And after that, what did you do?
Um,
I started getting dressed. I think that's when I was starting getting dressed. And my husband said, where are you going? I said, I don't know, something.
Oh, you had physical therapy? I had to cancel my physical therapy appointment. But yeah, I've been doing my physical therapy every day. And yeah, I think it's been helping. Hope it's helping you. Hi, Lori.
Happened. John didn't come home. Karen's worried, so I'm going to go help her. And he said, you're not going anywhere. It's a blizzard. And I said, yes, I am. And I went downstairs. I started the car, cleared it off, and I sat there waiting, and she didn't come. So I called.
During the time that you're waiting in the car, do you know about how long period it was that you were waiting in the car?
I would say at least 10 minutes of sitting in the car.
And to that point, as far as when you went outside to the car, what, if anything, did you observe about the weather, and what, if anything, did you do to the car as you were turning it on?
I cleaned the car off. I turned the car on. I got in it, and I thought to myself, well, she thinks somebody got hit by a plow or something. I'll see if there's any accidents. So I called the Canton non-emergency line, and I said, have there been any plow accidents? My friend's boyfriend didn't come home. And they said, no, there were no accidents. So then I called Good Samaritan Hospital in Milton to see if anybody had been brought in a car accident. They said no. And then finally Karen called back.
That would make sense. This would make sense if you thought that someone was missing and you're trying to find out where they are. I don't know. I feel like everything that she did so far seems excellent. You're trying to call to find out if there's any snowball accidents. You're trying to call the hospitals nearby to see if John's there.
Before we get to that, just in reference to, at any point in time, did you call Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
And when you called Mr. O'Keefe, were you able to speak to Mr. O'Keefe?
No.
Do you know how many times you called Mr. O'Keefe?
My husband called him, and I think I called him.
When was that in relation to you going up to your car and clearing the car?
That was when I was in the house. Karen actually said, can you try and call him?
And you did, and you didn't get an answer?
Correct.
And you know whether or not your husband got an answer?
He did not.
So you go out to the car, you're waiting, and you make a phone call initially to Canton Police, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you know who you spoke to at Canton Police?
I believe it was Officer Good.
Is that someone that you knew in any way prior to this date of January 29th?
We have mutual friends, but no, I'd never met him.
The hospital. Now, you call the hospitals, and then at some point after you finish speaking to the hospitals, the defendant then calls you back, correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, can you describe to the jury sort of what was the content of that conversation that third time?
I said, where are you? I'm in the car. And she said, I'm at Jen's house. And I said, Jen who? She said, Jen McCabe. She's going to drive my car. And I said, okay, stay there. I'll come to there. We'll follow and we'll drop your car off. We'll just take my car and go look for him. And I drove to Jen's, and I pulled in the driveway behind them. I was still on speakerphone. Jen is driving. Karen's in the passenger seat, and we drove. I said, do you remember, did you look through the house? Could he be passed out somewhere in the house? She said, I don't know. I didn't look. So I said, let's do that. Let's get in the cars. We're not taking two cars. It's a blizzard. We're going to go back to Meadows, and we're going to go
Well, that would be weird, though, if she didn't look through the house.
look in the house first. He could be passed out behind the couch or on the floor. Who knows? So we went to the house.
I'm sorry, before you get into that, just as far as directionality and where you're going at this initial stage, you're sort of directing what's going to happen and where you're going to go, correct?
Correct.
Now, you had mentioned that the defendant said she was at Jen's house. You asked Jen who, and she said Jennifer McCabe, correct?
Objection. I'll allow it.
With regard to Ms. McCabe, did you know her, or how did you know her prior to this morning of January 29th?
I had met her once when John took her and I to Reebok because he got a 50% discount, so we would go periodically and get the kids' shoes. So John, and myself went to Reebok, got shoes, and then we went to the Hillside for lunch. That was it. I wasn't friends with her.
Is that someone that you had programmed in your phone as a contact? Did you have her information prior to January 29th?
No.
And
That's what
when
Jen
you went
said.
to Ms. McCabe's house that morning, how was it that you knew where Ms. McCabe's house was at that time?
I picked up Kaylee there a time or two for John and brought her home if I was heading that way because Jen's house is on the way to John's.
And so you go to Ms. McCabe's house, and can you describe to the jury sort of what you observe or what you see when you're first coming up to Ms. McCabe?
I pulled in the driveway behind Karen's car, and Karen and Jen are in the car talking. I'm still on Bluetooth so I can hear them. And Karen said that she remembered leaving him at Waterfall. And Jen said, no, I saw you pull up to my sister's house. And then at some point in the conversation, she said, what about my taillight? What about my taillight? And I looked, and there was a piece missing. But it was caked on with snow. You could tell there was a little black hole, but there was snow like caked on it, and it was a blizzard at this point.
Now, just as far as over the course of this early morning when you're making that drive from your house to Ms. McCabe's house, correct?
Yes, black hole. And said, no, I saw you pull up to my sister's house. And then at some point in the conversation, she said, what about my taillight? What about my taillight? And I looked, and there was a piece missing. But it was caked on with snow. You could tell there was a little black hole, but there was snow like caked on it, and it was a blizzard at this point.
Now, just as far as over the course of this early morning when you're making that drive from your house to Ms. McCabe's house, correct?
Yes.
So during that time, can you describe sort of what the lighting conditions were, what the roadway conditions were, what you observed as you were driving over there?
It was not light out yet, and it was really
I guess also, like, let's say Karen was in a frantic, couldn't find John, went to the car, drove. How would she have noticed? When would she have noticed that her taillight was out? 'Cause, there are some people that drive around and they don't realize their taillight is. Oh no, that's usually when the lights are on though. I guess when would she have time to realize that her taillight was busted? When would she have checked if she was like in a frantic or in a frenzy?
really bad drive.
Morning when you
Missing. But it was caked on with snow. You could tell there was a little black hole, but there was snow like caked on it, and it was a blizzard at this point.
Now, just as far as over the course of this early morning when you're making that drive from your house to Ms. McCabe's house, correct?
Yes.
So during that time, can you describe sort of what the lighting conditions were, what the roadway conditions were, what you observed as you were driving over there?
It was not light out yet, and it was really bad driving.
And bad driving in reference to snow, was that correct?
Yes.
So you get to Ms. McCabe's house, and during the drive from your house to Ms. McCabe's house, you're speaking to both Ms. McCabe and Ms. Reed.
Yes.
And with reference, I think you've said a couple times as far as a Bluetooth. So as far as what you're hearing on the other side of the conversation, is it just one person, or are you able?
Anyone find it sus as hell that she and Jan went from barely acquaintances to sudden besties? I don't know if they're considered besties. I want to know what the relationship is like right now. I don't know. But I could see them, you know, if they were friends with John, they weren't friends with each other. They could have bonded over, you know, missing John together over his death, possibly. Maybe.
To hear sort of everything that's going on in the call.
I could hear everything. It was like a regular phone call.
Because if they weren't friends before, I just don't see why she would want to join in on Jen McCabe hiding, you know, possibly someone in their family killing John. Like, why would she want to have anything to do with that, right?
In the car.
From where you were, your impression was it was hooked up to the speaker of the call.
Correct.
And when you get to Ms. McCabe's house, or what you were just testifying about as far as the tailor, when is it that you're making those observations?
In Jen's driveway.
And so about how far away from the defendant's car were you the first time that you see or your attention's drawn to this tailor?
I was parked right behind them in the driveway.
And can you describe which part of the vehicle you're looking at as far as which taillight that you're observing this damage?
We already went over this. Why do we jump around and come back to it?
The right passenger.
And so from there, as far as Ms. McCabe's driveway, you make these observations. Where is it that you go from there?
Say it again?
So after you're making those observations and you're overhearing that conversation or you're having that conversation with Bluetooth, where did the three of you go?
We went to Meadows, to John's house.
And how was it that each of you sort of got from Ms. McCabe's house to John's house on that?
Jen drove Karen's car, and I followed behind in my car.
It wasn't the opening statement. Corrugate, this hasn't come in much in trial yet, but she hit John's car leaving to go look for him. That would be the only reason why I think Karen would know about her taillight right away. But why would she mention her taillight when it comes to figuring out where John is? That would just be a two separate issue. Because what Kerry is saying that when they were talking about where John was, Karen was saying, what about my taillight? What about my taillight? What about my taillight? Which would allude to her thinking maybe she hit John because her taillight was busted. I guess, like, why would Karen be so concerned about her taillight at the time? It's possible maybe she was concerned about her taillight if they were going to drive around Karen Reed's car and she was afraid she was going to get pulled over by the cops because her taillight was busted, maybe?
Car.
And when you arrived there, where did you go? Where did you park? Like,
I pulled in, I think I pulled in right behind. She pulled her car sort of in front of the garage bays, and I pulled in the driveway behind her.
and when you say she, do you know who was driving?
Jen McCabe, sorry.
Driving in Ms. Reed's front passenger seat.
Correct.
And you're driving your car behind.
Correct.
Well, what kind of car did you have?
A Ford Explorer,
Do you recall what color it was?
dark gray.
And as far as Ms. Reed, do you recall what kind of vehicle she had at that point?
A Lexus SUV,
Recall what color that was?
black.
Now, with respect to Mr. O'Keefe, do you recall what kind of vehicle John O'Keefe had?
He has a Traverse.
And do you recall what color that was?
It's like a beige green.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could ask to publish what's been marked as exhibit number 2.
Okay.
Ms. Roberts, direct your attention to the screen over here. Do you recognize what is up on the screen?
That's John's house.
That seemed like a fair and accurate trailer. What John's house looked like at around the time of January 29th, when you went over that one.
Much snowier, but yes.
Sorry.
Oh, I said it was much more snow, but yes.
Now, not visible in this particular photograph with the driveway.
I thought someone did say that John's phone was found underneath his body. Because I remember I thought that was so weird. That John was laying on his back. I remember someone saying that the phone was found underneath him. Which I was like, underneath him? Why would it be underneath him? And then there was a cocktail glass next to him. But I don't remember who testified that. But I thought I remembered that too.
The way that you're talking about facing Mr. O'Keefe's house at Meadows Ave, as we are in this picture, whereabouts would the driveway be? To the left or the right or something?
To the right.
And Your Honor, with court's permission, if I could ask to publish what's been marked as exhibit 91.
Okay.
No, my internet was like, nah, we done. And I was like, no, please, let me get into Kerry Roberts. Please,
And again,
internet.
Ms. Roberts, do you recognize what's up on screen?
That is John's car.
And what is it that's behind John?
Behind a basketball hoop?
No, I'm sorry. That's correct. Not the rear of the vehicle, but sort of in the photograph behind on the other side of the passenger side.
Oh, the garage doors?
And there are two garage doors on the left, on the right side. Right? You're familiar with this house? We've been over it a number of times when Mr. O'Keefe lived there.
Correct.
And as far as, what if anything, were you familiar with as far as Mr. O'Keefe having regarding towards security around the house?
Security, he has a Ring camera that was in the driveway and a Ring camera that was at the side door.
And with regard to the garage itself, as far as you've been in there as well?
Yes.
And so what is behind the left door of the garage?
His big old blue convertible.
And on the right side of the garage, what if anything is behind?
Nothing. He's got all organized stuff and kids sporting. I don't know if he parked in there or not.
Now, as far as how Mr. O'Keefe kept his garage, kept his home, was there a particular way in which he kept it? No.
Neat freak.
I'm sorry, what was that?
He was a neat freak.
Okay.
And as you enter into this garage, what if any access would you then have through inside the home?
There's a set of stairs and it brings you right into like the mudroom, which leads into the kitchen.
Now, when you would go over to Mr. O'Keefe's house, in this case, or any rules or preferences would Mr. O'Keefe have with regard to footwear?
You did not wear footwear in the house. You took your shoes off.
And is that something that applies to people who live there as well as people who are visiting?
Yes.
And how would you describe that a relatively strict rule?
Yes.
Now, Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could, I'd like to publish a portion of...
I don't have my notes on me because I'm on a different computer. I could find in my notes to see who said that, but I could have sworn I remember that the phone was found underneath him.
Exhibit 6.
I just don't remember who said
Okay.
that.
Gentlemen, if I could have from driveway video number 154.
Oh, footage? Oh, I love footage. Show me the footage.
So, Ms. Roberts, do you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes, that's Karen's car and my car, and John's is in the background.
Now, in front of you on the desk, there should be a laser point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, pressing on that button and pointing toward that screen, if I could ask you just direct the jury's attention to where you see Ms. Reed's vehicle, where you see your vehicle, and where you see the vehicle itself.
That is John's car. That is Karen's car. That is my car.
Is this fair enough?
No, because I haven't listened to Kerry's testimony yet, but I heard it. Oh, I'm wearing my serial killer glasses right now. These are my cheap glasses that doesn't have anti-reflect coating on it, so that's why I look fucking crazy right now. But my glasses are in the shop right now. They're trying to fix it to see if they can. I don't know if they can. I'm gonna cry. But they're also changing the lens out. But I don't know. I'm so sad about my glasses. It's your fault, Chai. You told me to get them. I'm blaming you. Tell me why. Okay, so I went. Quick story, okay? So my glasses, my screw came off, and I was like, okay, well, I somehow got really lucky and I found them in my house. Like Shiro found them, was like really cool. So I put the screw back in, and I think there's just something wrong with the glasses. The screw came out again, like really quickly. And so I lost it. Don't know where the fuck it is, which is annoying. So I went to a regular eyeglass store, and he's like, oh, these are like designer glasses. Like, we'll try to put these in. Didn't work. So I went to the actual store, and he was like, oh, these glasses are discontinued. And I was like, okay, well, can I get the fucking screw? Well, not like that. I'm a really nice person. And he was like, oh, well, these are discontinued, and our brand just likes to use very unique screws to their fucking glasses, so we don't have these screws. I'm like, what? So annoying. Just tell him to weld it. I don't, can I just like 3D print it or something like that? Ugh. So my glasses are in the shop right now. They're trying to see if they can find a screw for it, and then they're changing out the lens. And I'm really sad because I didn't know you don't have to update your prescription every year. I wasted money doing that. Oh boy, all right. I like your cat eye glasses, the high pony with the bangs. Exactly. She may have done it hitting John's car on her way out in that morning, but I don't really believe her for a second that Karen was talking about it that morning. I don't know.
I can portray where the cars were and what things looked like when you first arrived at Mr. O'Keefe's house, coming from Ms. McCabe.
Yes.
Ms. Owen, if you could. Now, with reference to any individuals that you observed in this video, again, using the laser pointer, you could draw your attention to who you observed and where they were.
That is Jen McCabe, and that is Karen Reed, and that's me.
And at some point, you enter in through the garage, is that right?
Correct.
Now, as far as the garage doors were concerned, when you came back that morning, what, if anything, did you notice about the garage?
The right garage door wouldn't close.
So it was open when you arrived?
I don't recall if it was open.
Yeah, they keep talking about the garage door being left open. What's the significance of that, or are we just not there yet?
When we arrived, but when we were leaving, it wouldn't close.
And do you recall, do you have any idea of sort of how that mechanically worked, like how you would open, how you would close the garage door?
Yeah, there's a code on the side.
And at any point in time, when we noticed that the garage door was open, were you or any of the people that you were able to close that door?
No.
And so was that the door that you entered into in order to get into the garage?
Right? I know. They want you to buy new glasses. That's like such a shit thing. I'm like, the regular screw is not that much different. I don't know. I guess I don't know. What do I know? I don't make like fucking glasses, right? But a regular screw is not that much different than the others, than their screw. Their screw is just like a tiny bit small, like a tiny bit smaller. I'm like, could they not just have used like a universal screw? Like, come on, man. I don't know. It's so annoying.
Get into the button and take off the shoes for
Correct.
And when you came into the house that morning, People that you were able to close that can't work, like how you would open, how you would close the garage door.
There's a code on the side.
And at any point in time, when we noticed that the garage door was open, were you or any of the people that you were able to close that door?
No,
And so was that the door that you entered into in order to get into the garage, to get into the mud, and take off your shoes?
correct.
And when you came into the house that morning, you entered into the mud, what, if anything, did you do with your shoes, and what, if anything, did you observe Mr. McCabe and do with their shoes?
Jen and I both had taken our shoes off in the sort of steps in the garage before we entered into the mudroom. We took our shoes off, and Karen just walked in.
And so if you could just play the video.
Yeah, I know Lolly's trying to make a big deal about the shoes thing. And I did mention this before. I guess you could see it like two ways for me. Would be like, one, Karen was in such a frenzy about John. Who the fuck cares about taking off shoes, right? Who has time for that? You're trying to find out where John is. You're trying to look for him. You're trying to see if he's around the house. Two, maybe the defense is trying to say that like, oh, Karen knew John was dead. Therefore, she doesn't if he's dead, who's going to be mad at her for taking off the shoe, for not taking off the shoes? I don't know. I feel like the shoe thing is like, eh. The audacity. She didn't have time to put on shoe covers. Yeah, I would have assumed Karen and Kaylee would have searched the house before going out to look for John. I don't know. I feel like Lolly like likes to focus on things that are just kind of like, to me seems kind of like eh. But I'm like, maybe later down the road it'll take us somewhere.
Now, Ms. Roberts, with reference to the Ring video security system that Mr. O'Keefe had at his home, if you know who had access to that?
I do not.
You obviously, you know whether or not Mr. O'Keefe had access to that?
He did, yes.
Okay, do you know how or what device he used in order to access it?
I only know he had it on his phone
How do you know he had it?
because he would check it all the time to see if the kids were home or dropped off or.
That's something you did in your presence?
Yes.
Now, with regard to, at some point when you get to the home, beyond the sort of initial observations you made in Mr. McCabe's driveway with regard to the right rear passenger taillight of Ms. Reed's vehicle, what, if any, other observations did you make, or what, if anything else, did you do with reference to that area of the vehicle?
Karen did point it out at one point in the driveway. She said, my taillight, look at my taillight. And I looked at it and I said, you told me you don't remember anything from last night. She said, do you think I hit him? Do you think I hit him? And I said, no, I don't think you hit him. I think you probably hit something, but let's just go in the house and look for him.
And so as far as your recollection is concerned, that sort of interaction that you had of looking at the taillight, when did that happen?
I don't know if it was when, well, obviously it wasn't when we got there. It was what must have been when we were leaving to go out to look for him.
When you what?
And that's what I was wondering, because Jen McCabe said when they got there, they said, when Jen McCabe got there, she said that Karen was like, look at my tail, and they looked at the taillight together, and they went back into the house, and they went into the house. And we saw the footage, and we're like, oh, that's not what happened. Did Jen McCabe get it wrong? Is she making that up? Did she forget? Maybe it happened on the way out, and then we have Kerry Roberts here who said, I mean, we didn't see it on the footage, so maybe it happened on the way out.
I'm
So
sorry.
then maybe we should see that on the way out then, right? Hold on, there should be surveillance footage to back this up.
I wasn't sure if it was when we arrived or when we were leaving to go back out and look for him, but now that I've seen the video, it's obviously when we came back out of the house.
Okay.
And who was present for that?
Who was present?
Yes.
Jen McCabe, Karen Reed, and myself.
And as far as where Ms. McCabe parked that vehicle, at any point in time that you were at the house, did that vehicle move at all? And by that vehicle, I mean Ms. Reed's vehicle.
I don't think so.
So where it's parked in that video is essentially where it stayed as far as you know.
I believe so.
Now, with reference to those observations, or when you were looking at the rear passenger taillight area of Ms. Reed's vehicle, how close to the vehicle were you when you were making those observations?
Right in front of it. There was one piece, like a rectangle encapsulated, like whatever was broken. I remember there was one piece of metal sort of sticking out. So if it was an encasement for a light of some sort, I remember looking at it and the piece was sort of sticking out and I thought someone's going to catch their sleeve on that or something.
And now from there, when you arrived at the house, you go into the house, you take off your shoes, what happened?
I started looking, Jen started looking, Karen, her and Jen went upstairs. I started looking downstairs. I started looking on the other side of the couches to see if maybe he passed out somewhere. And then I went upstairs, and Karen was standing in John's room. The bed was made. She was just standing there. Jen had gone in to talk to Kaylee. And then I said, all right, let's go.
Now,
He's not in the house.
as far as
He's not in the house.
your knowledge of Mr. O'Keefe, him not coming home when any of the children were home, was that something that was normal?
Him not coming home if the children were home? Yeah, he would not do that.
And obviously you knew Kaylee was there, but what, if anything, did you know as to where Patrick was?
He was at a friend's house.
And was that something that you knew independent of this morning, or what had transpired up to that point?
Say that again?
How did you find out that Patrick was at a friend's house?
Karen said, I said, where's Patrick? She said he's at his friend's.
So you were in the downstairs area of the home, is that correct?
Yes.
And looking through the rooms, you didn't find Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
No,
Now, at any point in time, did you go upstairs?
I did.
And when you went upstairs, where in the upstairs?
At the top of the stairs is John's bedroom, so I looked in there. I looked in the bathroom. I looked in the closet. I looked in Patrick's room. I looked in the other two bedrooms.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Was the bed made?
And Kaylee was in her room, so Jen was in there. But I was looking through the house.
And as far as Mr. O'Keefe's bedroom, when you were there, what, if anything, did you observe as far as the condition of the bed?
The bed was made.
You mentioned you looked in a variety of different rooms on the second floor. You said sort of 2 other rooms. What, if anything, were those other rooms used for, if you know?
I think one of them was a computer room.
But I did mention this before that, okay, well, we don't know if Karen said that she slept on the bed or not. Karen could have just passed out on the couch, maybe.
It was the room that faced the front of the house, and the back room had
After a night of drinking, not everyone returns back to their normal bed, right?
a bed in it that Mrs. O'Keefe would stay in when she would stay over.
Again, just to be clear, when you say Mrs. O'Keefe, you mean John's mother?
John's mother, sorry.
And as far as the computer room, if anyone had access to that, if you know?
Had access to the computer room.
Yes. What was it used for?
Oh, there was a desk with a computer.
Right, and the state could also say, well, Karen didn't sleep at all that night because maybe something was on her mind.
Or laptop.
You know whose laptop that was, whether it was John's, whether it was the defendant's, whether it was kids.
I don't know if it was the defendant's at the time, but John's laptop used to be in that room.
So his laptop was missing, or?
Your Honor,
I don't know if it was the defendant's at the computer room.
yes. What was it used for?
Oh, there was a desk with a computer or laptop.
You know whose laptop that was, whether it was John's, whether it was the defendant's, whether it was kids.
I don't know if it was the defendant's at the time, but John's laptop used to be in that room.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask if I could publish just a couple more photos on the screen for Mr. Roberts.
Okay. That's Karen Reed's Lexus.
And specifically, if you could, using the latest one in front of you, direct the jury's attention to where you observed damage.
That's where the metal piece I was describing was.
As far as what's depicted in this photograph up on the screen, is that consistent with what you observed in Mr. O'Keefe's driveway and Mr. McCabe's driveway when you saw it that way?
Well, caked in snow, but yes.
Perhaps in the snow. Yes.
Yes.
It's possible she may have lured up immediately. That's what I'm thinking.
Let's go and find out the next exhibit next week. Again, Mr. Roberts, you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes.
As we have a closer up image of the same area, correct?
But people have said that she has done like public interviews. You can watch that to see what her story is.
Yes.
And what's depicted in this closer up image, is that also consistent with what you observed in his driveway and Mr. O'Keefe's driveway that way?
Yes.
Now, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask again if I could publish a portion of what's been marked as Exhibit 41.
Okay.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to fast forward to about
What are we
2 hours,
looking
9
at?
minutes, and 30 seconds. Right from there. Don't see the bottom there.
Oh, we've already saw this video.
Mr. Roberts, direct your attention up the screen to recognize what's on the pause portion of the screen. Ms. Gilman.
That's John's house.
Ms. Gilman, if you could press that again. And if you could pause. And again, Mr. Roberts, direct your attention up the screen to recognize what's sort of in front of the camera in the video portion of the video.
That's Karen's car and John's car.
And where you observe Karen's car and John's car, again, if you could just using laser pointer direct your attention where you observe each of those in this frame here.
That's Karen's car. That's John's car.
Are those essentially the same positions that you were talking about that the jury saw earlier in the ring video from Mr. O'Keefe's house?
I mean, I don't know if Massachusetts does it different or anything, but it's my understanding if you don't want to cooperate with the police, you don't have to cooperate with the police.
Yes.
You know, may I approach?
Yes.
Is this the
Do you want
welfare
this up on
check?
the screen
Yes.
or down?
Up for now.
Okay.
But
Separate law enforcement testified about them checking up on John O'Keefe's children. Or at least on Kaylee. but she'd already gone to someone else's house.
So Roberts, I'm going to show you just 2 photographs. Ask you to just look at those for a moment.
Okay.
Do you recognize those? Or do you recognize what's depicted in them?
Do I recognize what?
What's depicted in each of those photos?
Karen's car.
And,
Oh God, I love the way she answers him.
may I approach Ron?
Yes.
I will seek to introduce them in the next exhibits.
Is there any objection? No objection. All right, thank you.
Your Honor, while those are being marked, may we approach?
Hold on. Sidebar.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Karen's car. Duh. Gosh.
And Ms. Roberts, what's up on the screen now? 101 communicated that to Ms. Reed in the same position where Ms. McCabe left the park on the property, correct?
Yes.
Does this appear to be a still shot from the same video that you just saw in the prior?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit 102 now.
Why are we looking at the still shot if we had the image? Oh, because he wants to zoom in. That's good for
And
the
Ms.
jury's
Roberts, what's up on the
eyes.
screen? That's the second photograph that I showed you just a moment ago.
Yes.
That's essentially a closer up or zoomed in image of what's in the same still image that you saw in the prior, correct?
Yes.
And again, if you could, using the laser pointer, just direct your attention to the damage that you observed on the right rear passenger tail light of Ms. Reed's vehicle. That one. Okay. I mean, you can repeat it.
I haven't heard anyone say anything mean about this witness. A lot of people in my chat thought
Don't find Mr. O'Keefe.
she was credible and stuff like that.
And what happens?
Then I said, let's go look for him. If he might be walking home, or if you thought he got hit by a plow, let's just.
Seemed to have cared for the victim the most.
And Jen and Karen wanted to go back to 34 Fairview where they were at Jen said she saw her pull up to 34 Fairview the night before. So Karen really wanted to go back there. I was the one that said, no, let's drop a car off, go to Meadows and look through the house, and then we'll start looking if he's not in the house. So that's what we did. We got in the car and we were going to head back to Jen's sister's house.
And so this conversation, as far as the defendant, as you're testifying, really wanting to go to Fairview, when did that occur in relation to when you got to Mr. O'Keefe?
On the way from Jen McCabe's house to John's house in the car.
This is over the Bluetooth as you're driving?
Yes, Karen said I left him at Waterfall, and Jen said, no, I saw you pull up in front of my sister's.
And so after coming out of Mr. O'Keefe's house,
That's what Lally said in pre. Oh, I didn't watch any pre-trial stuff.
you exit
Do you have a link to that video?
the same way that you entered,
Yes,
come out the garage door, get into your car?
yes.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of where was everybody seated in your car when you did it?
I was driving, Karen was in the back seat, and Jen was in the passenger seat.
And as far as Ms. McCabe's sister's house, at the time, did you know where that was or who her sister was or anything like that?
I didn't even know she had a sister.
And you know about how long a drive or how far a drive or what the route was that you took going from Meadows to her sister's house?
I think we went main roads because we were looking to see, I mean, I don't know what we were looking for, but we were looking for him. I don't know if we thought he was walking home or if he got hit by a plow. So we went main roads. We pulled out, I think we went Bolivar Street, and then Jen was giving directions because I didn't know where we were going.
And to be clear, Bolivar Street, you're talking about that's Bolivar?
Yes,
And so then Ms. McCabe is then giving you directions as you're driving, correct?
correct.
Now, as you're driving, again, as far as what, if anything, did you see as far as plows or how were the roads treated at that time? What if anything, did you observe reference to that?
It was bad driving. There were plows out, but it was really bad driving.
And the visibility as you were driving from Mr. O'Keefe's house to Ms. McCabe's sister's house, how would you describe the visibility?
It was very poor. It was,
Yes, if you ever do find the link, please feel free to send it over my way. You can post it in the Discord as well. We have a true crime section in there. Thanks. If you find it.
in the middle of a blizzard.
Now, when you get to the street, at some point you're directed by Ms. McCabe to Fairview Road, correct?
Correct.
And when you get to Fairview Road, do you recall whether or not you took a left or a right, or how did you come onto Fairview Road?
Off of Chapman Street, I took a right onto Fairview.
You took a right from Chapman onto Fairview.
Correct.
And as you're coming down Fairview Road, what, if anything, did you note or observe as far as the sort of elevation of the roadway?
You go downhill.
You go downhill?
Yes.
This particular area of Canton, obviously you've lived in Canton for several years. Are you somewhat familiar with this area of Canton?
Yeah.
And how is it that you were familiar with the area of Canton prior to this date if you've never been to Ms. McCabe's house?
The commuter rail is right near there that I would take to work.
Are there any schools in that area?
Oh, Chad already told me there's no cross-examination.
Yes, the John F. Kennedy School.
And you mentioned that your son played baseball, correct?
Yes, and
Ball field.
my son and John's nephew also went to the home daycare across the street from the JFK.
Now,
Didn't they find parts of the taillight at Albert's house near John's body? They did, but they didn't find it when they used a snowblower around John's body. It was found days after when the snow had already started melting.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask to just publish a brief portion of what's been marked as Exhibit 12.
Okay.
What are we looking at?
What I'm going to ask is if you could push this video forward to 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
That's why people thought it was weird, because it's like, how did you not find it the first time? Especially when you're using a leaf blower and you're blowing, you know, a 6. I think they said, what was the grid again that they were searching around John's body? Not 6 by 6 because John's pretty tall. Was it 12 by 12? I forgot what he said. Maybe it was hidden underneath the snow. I don't know. Because then that's when I was asking about the chunks of the taillight pieces. I mean, they were red. How big were they? Blah, blah, blah.
You could play it there.
I don't know, love. I don't know. The other side of the story is that maybe those taillight pieces were planted.
As far as what's taken in this video, is that a fair and accurate portrayal, consistent with what you observed that morning as you were driving around going from Mr. O'Keefe's house to Ms. McCabe's sister's house?
Yes.
And the turn that this vehicle is taking at this point in the video, about 2 minutes and 40 seconds in, you recognize what street that vehicle is turning onto?
I believe it's Fairview.
Ms. Gilman,
Why are we watching this again? We've seen this video with many of the law enforcement, the paramedics, some of the other witnesses.
Ms. Roberts, as you're driving from Mr. O'Keefe's house to this address on Fairview Road that you've never been to before, what's going on inside the car?
Karen was frantic. She wouldn't put her seatbelt on, and I was getting nervous because we're driving in a blizzard. She kept leaning in between the two seats. I think at some point she was texting in the back seat, and then she'd be leaning. She was just frantic the whole morning.
And as far as her screaming, do you recall anything specifically that she was screaming, or what, if any, sort of conversation was going on in the car as you were driving?
There was some conversation about a woman I didn't know that was Bella's mom, and she said Bella's mom never liked me. I think Bella lived near Jen's sister, maybe. I don't know. Some conversation about Bella's mom, and Karen said she didn't like me.
And do you recall where you were in your travels when that topic of conversation came up?
No, I don't recall.
Now, in reference to following that, what, if anything, did you say in regards to any other sort of women?
Any other what?
Following that conversation,
Is Lolly going to get Bella's mom to testify as well?
regard to Bella's mom, who you didn't know, what, if anything, did you say or introduce into the conversation?
Fairview Road runs along Spring Street, I think it is. Spring Lane. So Spring Lane and Fairview are both off at Chapman Street, and there was a woman he dated that lived on Spring Lane. So when Jen was telling me where her sister's house was, I said, I don't know where Fairview is. And she said, it's near Spring Lane. And I said, oh, where the dance instructor lived. John had once dated a dance instructor. And then Karen said, do you think he could have gone there? Do you think that's where he could have been? No, I was just using it as a reference point. She said it's near Spring Lane. And I knew that the dance instructor lived on Spring Lane.
And just to be clear, when you say the dance instructor, this would be for his niece, Haley?
Correct.
And you indicated that the two of them, being Mr. O'Keefe and the dance instructor, had dated at some point in the past, right?
Yes.
How long ago was that?
Oh, it was when Kaylee was little. She was probably like 5.
Oh, that's a long time ago.
Almost 10 years before this date that you're driving away. Now, as you're driving along and driving down Fairview, what is it that you're doing? What, if anything, you observe Mr. McCabe doing? And then what, if anything, you observe the defendant?
Well, we were looking for John walking or wherever he may be. So I'm driving and looking on both sides, and I think Jen was looking on both sides. And Karen she would be in the back seat, then she'd be in between us, then she'd be in the back seat, and then in between us.
And as you came down the hill on Fairview, what, if anything, what happened then?
Jen said, my sister's house is right up here. And all of a sudden, Karen said, there he is, let me the F out of this car. And she started kicking the door.
And how was she kicking the door?
With her feet. Well, how was she kicking the door?
How hard was she kicking?
Oh,
He did say, how was she kicking the door? Or that's what I heard too.
pretty hard. I mean, she wanted to get out of the car, but it was locked because once you start driving, the back door's locked. So I looked over and I didn't see anything. And I looked at Jen and I said, she's crazy. And I unlocked the door and I sat back and watched. And she ran over to a mound of snow.
And so as the time you're driving down the road, have you seen anything, as you're driving down, sort of looking at the side of the road, have you seen anything on your side of the vehicle?
No,
And when you say she gets out of the vehicle, is it your side or passenger side where Mr. McCabe is? That
the driver's side.
she gets out of the driver's side of the vehicle and the back passenger, correct?
Correct.
And how quickly does she go sort of from your car to where she ends up?
She ran over to the mound.
And at that point in time, even when she runs over, could you see what she was running over to?
At some point, I realized it was the shape of a body.
And then when was that you realized? When in this sort of sequence were you able to realize that?
That was in seconds. Once she ran over to his body, I said, "Oh my God!" And she lifted up his shirt and started to lay on him.
And when you stopped to let her out, where were you in relation to that mountain of snow or what you learned?
Well, I think my car was like in the middle of the road. I just stopped.
And in relation to where the mountain of snow was, had you driven past it at that point? So where was it?
Yes.
So it was located behind your vehicle?
Yeah.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, I would ask just let's play on that for about 6 minutes.
Yeah, especially if they did it 10 years ago. I thought maybe they did it a lot more recent. Maybe it was like the woman before. Maybe it was like the woman before he dated Karen Reed, and maybe there was like still like some sort of like animosity or tension, possibly. But I mean, 10 years ago, I don't know.
Okay. What's depicted in the screen in front of this camera angle? Do you recognize what that is?
That's my car.
That's essentially where you parked your car when Miss Reed started kicking the doors and got out and ran over.
Yes.
Now, from this video, you see where in relation to your vehicle, Mr. O'Keefe, where you found Mr. O'Keefe.
With the pointer.
Okay. Ms. Gilman, if you could, again, display for about this.
Yes. Here you go. Oh, is she crying on the stand? Yeah. Because this must be so emotional for her, because this is the moment where, you know, find your really close friend, why did I say it like that? You find your close friend dead outside.
You got a problem? You what? Huh?
What happened to the audio?
Visuals on screen again.
That is Jen McCabe. That's Karen Reed. That's me.
Roberts, in relation to what you just saw in the video, as far as at some point the rear sort of tailgate or hatchback on your SUV, that was in the up position, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you recall why that was?
Because I was having Jen get the baby blankets to wrap around him out of my car.
And is that something that you just sort of have in the back of your car at all times?
Yeah.
Now, at any point in time
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
in that sequence, did you call anybody or have any sort of phone calls that you made that went to voicemail at that time?
Did I?
Yes.
I don't know.
And so nothing that you recall, is that correct?
Correct.
And did you observe Ms. McCabe make any phone calls that just sort of went to voicemail and she left her phone in your car?
Objection. Sustained.
Let me take it back sort of when you're pulling. So as far as the conditions when you pull up and the defendant's banging on the door and gets out and runs over to O'Keefe, what's depicted in that video, obviously without your vehicle being in the middle of the roadway, is that fair and accurate portrayal of what the road looked like and sort of what you saw upon your arrival?
Yes.
So after the defendant gets out of the vehicle, what did you do? Where did you go?
When I realized it was him or someone, I ran over and I dug his head out, grabbed the snow.
And If I recall, you recognized the person in the snow was Mr. O'Keefe.
Once I dug his head out, yes.
You recall how his body was positioned as far as how on the stomach, on the back, on the side.
He was on his back,
So you brushed some snow away from his head, is that correct?
off his face.
And when you were brushing the snow off his face, what, if anything, did you observe about his face or the condition of him?
He had blood coming out of his nose and his mouth. And his right eye it looked like a golf ball. His left eye was fine. The right eye looked like a golf ball.
Now, you mentioned that you wiped some snow from around his head. What, if anything else, did you observe on the rest of his body?
He was bleeding in the back of the head. So when I was wrapping I don't know why I was wrapping blankets around his head, but I didn't know. He had a cut on the back of his head.
Do you recall which side of his head that cut was on?
I don't. It just was blood on the blanket that was under his head.
Now, as far as the rest of his body, did that have snow on it as well?
Say it again, I'm sorry?
The rest of his body, separate from his head area. What, if any, snow did you observe on the rest of his body?
He was completely covered.
And, you know about how much snow was covering the rest of his body?
I would say like 4 inches, maybe 3. I don't really remember exactly how many, but he was covered.
And so with reference to Mr. O'Keefe, and when you arrived there, 3 of you being you, the defendant, and Ms. McCabe, what is it that you were doing when you first sort of come over to Mr. O'Keefe?
Well, Karen was laying on top of him, and I told her to get off him because I was going to do CPR. And I said, Jen, you need to call 911. And I started CPR on his chest compressions, and then Karen was giving him mouth-to-mouth.
As far as CPR goes, is that something that you had any training in prior to this?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury a little bit about that as far as what, if any, training did you have as far as CPR was concerned?
No one can top AH. I haven't found anyone that topped AH so far in the stand. There's AH, there's Murdoch. Well, okay, hold on. I didn't see the entirety of Jodi Arias' trial, but from what I saw, Jodi Arias is pretty bad too.
CPR certified every 2 years through the American Red Cross at work.
So you start doing chest compressions, is that right?
Correct.
And you direct Ms. McCabe to call 911?
Yes.
And what was the defendant doing then?
She was doing mouth-to-mouth, and she was frantic again, running around. And
As she was running around, what, if anything else, was she doing or saying while she was running around?
did I hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead?
That's something that she said once or more than once?
More than once.
Similar to sort of the tonality or the volume of the voice that you were describing before. Is that consistent when you're there sort of in front of the house?
Yes.
Now, in relation to where you were with Mr. O'Keefe, obviously you've never been in this house before, is that right?
Correct.
What, if anything, did you observe as far as overhead lights, or street lights, or anything like that around that area where you found Mr. O'Keefe?
There was a fire hydrant, and there was some weird, like, electrical box thing sticking out of the ground.
But you don't recall any sort of like overhead lights or anything like that?
I don't recall.
Now,
There weren't any.
this process of you sort of doing compressions and Rita's doing mouth-to-mouth and then running around, is the mouth-to-mouth that she's doing, is that sort of consistent, or is it intermittent between? When is the running around in relation to the mouth-to-mouth?
I don't remember which was first. I was concentrating on doing chest compressions.
And so while you're doing chest compressions, at some point first responders start to arrive?
Correct.
And about how long was it from the time that you sort of get out of the vehicle, go over, realize it's Mr. O'Keefe, et cetera, and when the first responders arrived?
I don't know. Wasn't long. Maybe under 10 minutes.
During that time, or during any amount of time that you were there, did you see anybody from any of the houses on the street come out of the house, or any neighbors come out, or anything like that?
No.
Once, if you recall, do you recall whether it was police or fire or ambulance, or who showed up first?
I don't know. I think the police showed up first.
Active bleeding after laying the freezing conditions for 5 hours. It's possible that the blood on his head may have froze over, and then when they put the blanket, or when she put the blanket on his head, the warmth of the blanket could have like melted the icy blood, and that's why it looked, maybe to her it seemed like he was still actively bleeding.
The EMTs. I just know the EMTs came over and said, "We'll take it from here." I wasn't paying attention to what else was going on.
You're sort of focused on chest compressions, and at some point, some paramedic comes over and tells you they've got this.
Yes.
And I think when they brought John over to the hospital, I think they said his body temperature was like 8 degrees Fahrenheit, right? I don't know what that is in Celsius, but that's really low.
After that, where did you go?
After that, where'd I go? I stayed in the area. I think I went back over to the car.
And
Wait, can you guys hear me? Sorry, am I sitting too far away from the microphone? I might be. I'm a little too relaxed back here.
as paramedics are working on, you're over by your vehicle, correct?
I think so.
And so where was, what were you doing, and where was Mr. McCabe, and where was the defendant at that?
Karen was running around the body while the EMTs were trying to work on him. She was just frantic.
And so you're over by the car, and Ms. Reed is running around over where Mr. O'Keefe is.
Yes.
Where was Mr. McCabe?
I don't know. She was somewhere around the car.
closer to you than to where Mr. O'Keefe was?
I don't know.
Where Mr. O'Keefe was, if you know, where was he in relation to the roadway or the paved sort of pathway of Fairview Road?
I don't know because you couldn't tell which was the road and which was the grass. Like, you couldn't tell where the road began and ended. So I don't know.
Now, you described the defendant sort of running around Mr. O'Keefe frantically. What, if anything, was she saying about him?
Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead?
And that sort of phraseology or the way she put that, was that consistent throughout? Is that how she stated it?
Yes.
And again, in that same sort of loud, volume voice at the time.
Yes.
Now, at some point, Mr. O'Keefe is taken from where he is by the paramedics to an ambulance, correct?
Yes.
And as he's being taken off the ground, what, if anything, did you observe in that area?
His phone was under him, and it was grass.
Now, as far as the grass that you observed, how was that in relation to sort of the rest of the area where Mr. O'Keefe was?
Everything else had snow.
Everything else is covered in snow, and when he's lifted off the ground underneath his body, is that where the grass is?
Yes.
And his phone was where in relation to his body? As far as when he's lifted up, what part of his body had been open?
Like maybe his shoulder, maybe it was like his back. So when they lifted him up, it was under where like his, whatever the right side of his back.
What I'm asking is basically sort of up towards the shoulder blade or down towards the lower back, if you
Wait, what?
In the middle.
where in relation to his body? As far as when he's lifted up, what part of his body had been open?
Like maybe his shoulder, maybe it was like his back. So when they lifted him up, it was under where like his, whatever the right side of his back.
Or shoulder blade?
What I'm asking is basically sort of up towards the shoulder blade or down towards the lower back, if you
In the middle.
And when you saw the phone on the grass, what, if anything, did you do with O'Keefe's phone?
I picked it up. I put it in my pocket. And at some point, one of the first responders asked if I had it. I handed it over.
Do you recall who that first responder was?
No.
Do you recall even whether it was a police officer, a firefighter, or a paramedic? Or...
No.
The first responder
as
asked for
Mr.
the phone?
O'Keefe is being taken from where he was located when found him to the ambulance.
It would make sense if it was law enforcement that asked for it.
What happens then? What goes on from that?
At some point, Officer Good told Karen to calm down because she was frantic. And at some point, Jen and Karen were in the back of a police cruiser to warm up. I was standing outside watching the ambulance because I could see in through the ambulance that they were moving things and working on them.
And so what, if any, conversation did you have with the defendant or Mr. McCabe in reference to what you were seeing back at the ambulance?
I said, they're working on him. They're working on him. And at one point, Karen grabbed the front of my jacket and screamed in my face and said, are they working on him? Is he alive? And I said, they're working on him. They're working on him. They wouldn't be working on him if he was dead. And then she had us hold hands and pray. And then at some point, she had blood on her hands, and she told us she had her period. So I think she was just in a state of shock, maybe.
And what, if anything, did either you or Mr. McCabe say to her when she said?
We said, no, that's not your blood. That's John's.
And what happened
Then the ambulance drove away.
And if you know about how long was it from the time that you were told by the paramedic to step away from Mr. O'Keefe, they had this, from that point to when the ambulance drove?
I don't know. I don't think it was long. I watched them work on whatever they were doing in the back of the ambulance, and they got in the ambulance and drove away.
And after the ambulance left, where did the three of you go, or where did you go? Where did Ms. Reed go? Where did Ms.
Karen, I had her in my car. Jen was going up to the door to her sister's house, and I said to the police, I had been on the phone now. I called Mrs. O'Keefe, I had called John's mother, I had called John's father. At some point, Karen was on the phone with John's sister-in-law, Erin, telling him John's dead. So I grabbed the phone from her. I said, he's not dead, he's in the back of an ambulance, he's been in an accident. And she said Paul was going to go, John's brother, to the hospital that they were bringing John to. So I spoke to I called Mr. O'Keefe, he didn't answer.
Next question. That'll stand. The next question.
You call Mr. O'Keefe and Mrs. O'Keefe John's parents?
Correct.
At some point, you have a conversation with them, correct?
Correct.
And do you know why it was that Ms. McCabe was going into the house on Fairview?
Objection. Do you know why?
To wake her sister, I think.
And after those conversations, so you grab the phone from the defendant, you speak to Erin O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
And following those conversations with
Wait, I thought when they were all in the car together, that was when they were all in the car together, they held hands, the period thing happened. I thought either before or after that was when Karen told Jen McCabe to Google search how long does it take to die in the snow or something like that, hypothermia. I thought Kerry was there too. Was Kerry not there for that?
the family, where is it that you were going?
I asked Mrs. O'Keefe if she had four-wheel drive, and she said no, and Mr. O'Keefe had a van that didn't have four-wheel drive. So I said, I'm going to come get you, and I'll take you to the hospital.
All right, so why don't we end this now for a moment?
First, we'll take the luncheon.
Yep.
Going to be closed and leave your boss on your chairs. All
Sorry, which part is not true?
At some point, you have a conversation with them, correct?
Correct.
And do you know why it was that Ms. McCabe was going into the house on Fairview?
Objection.
Do you know why?
To wake her sister, I think.
And after those conversations, so you grabbed the phone.
I don't have my notes with me. Shh. Does anyone remember? I thought Jen said Kerry was there too. Was Kerry not there?
To Erin O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
And following those conversations with members of the O'Keefe family, where is it that you were going?
I asked Mrs. O'Keefe if she had four-wheel drive, and she said no, and Mr. O'Keefe had a van that didn't have four-wheel drive. So I said, I'm going to come get you, and I'll take you to the hospital.
All right, so why don't we end this now for a moment?
First, we'll take the luncheon.
Yep.
going to be closed and leave your boss on your chairs. All rise, jury out.
Oh, she doesn't even testify for that long.
For a moment, you first, just for a moment back to when you first.
Jen said Karen asked me. I thought it was when they were in the car together in the police car. I'm gonna have to go back to like day 2 or 3 or something like that and watch the dash cam and try to see if I can pick up any audio about that.